The music's still blaring at 3 a.m. They've blocked your drive yet again. The drilling and hammering gets started just as you're about to sleep. Yep, you've got nightmare neighbours. So what are you going to do about it? Here's our step-by-step guide to dealing with the nuisances next door. Remember, you can get all kinds of advice absolutely free by signing up for our newsletter. Use the link below and you'll get the latest property news delivered straight to your inbox. Now, when it comes to nightmare neighbours, noise is the most common complaint. And while that might be constant loud music or parties going on into the small hours, complaints about late-night lawn mowing or decibel-busting DIY are common too. Dogs left to bark for hours on end or invading your garden and using it as a toilet are another regular source of conflict. Believe it or not, overhanging trees are often the starting point for neighbour disputes. Their tree shouldn't be hanging into your garden, unless you don't mind, but you can only cut it back as far as the fence line. Who pays for boundary repairs, what kind of boundary your neighbours erects, and how high is another common flashpoint. Security lights shining directly into your house are classed as a statutory nuisance, as is privacy invasion. Say there's tall play equipment that means kids keep looking into your garden. And antisocial behaviour like inconsiderate parking, being abusive, or constantly lighting bonfires so the smoke ruins the washing on the line can be super stressful. So, what can you do? Step 1 is to keep a log of what's going on, when and for how long. This will build a picture of how major the problem is. You could take photos or video evidence too. Step 2 is to talk. It's always best to try and resolve these things amicably. Arrange a convenient time to have a chat. Calmly and politely explain how the problem is affecting you. Sometimes people aren't even aware their dog is barking when they go out, for instance. Suggest a solution that sounds like it would work for you both. You might ask for no music after 11 p.m. on working days, for instance. If your neighbour won't see sense, you'll need to take further action. If you rent, try contacting your landlord or letting agent. They may have a better relationship with your neighbour. If your neighbour is renting, contact their landlord. Many tenancies expressly forbid causing a nuisance, so the landlord will have a lot of sway in this situation. If you're a housing association tenant, you can go through a complaints process or contact the Housing Services Ombudsman. If talking to your neighbour doesn't work, before you plunge into lengthy and expensive legal action, try mediation. This is an impartial service, so both sides know they'll get a fair hearing. There is a cost involved, but it's less expensive and stressful than going legal. You can find one through the Civil Mediation Council or the Scottish Mediation Network, or through your council or housing association. Mediation, of course, needs both parties to agree to the process. So if that's never going to be an option with your uncooperative neighbour, you can complain to the council, who do have powers to stop antisocial behaviour. But be aware, it can take weeks for them to process the problem, so it's not a quick fix. In extreme circumstances, say your neighbour is being violent or harassing you, call the police. Likewise, if you see your neighbour breaking the law, you should report them. Step 7 is to take legal action, but I'd say this should always be a last resort. It's time-consuming, stressful, and expensive. Going through the courts will run up solicitors' bills, but you can start with free legal advice from a law or advice centre. The Law Society website can help find a solicitor who deals specifically with neighbourhood disputes. This is when it's so important to have kept records and evidence, so it's clear you have a strong case. Some people consider certain behaviours to be a nuisance, even if they're not. While neighbours can have problematic habits, they're not always issues you can complain about. Failing to take care of their garden, it can be a nuisance if your neighbour allows theirs to look unkempt and overgrown. However, unfortunately, it's their own property, leaving rubbish out. Unless they're dumping rubbish onto your property, their own waste is not your concern. However, if the problem takes over the street or others' gardens, the council will intervene, complaining about antisocial behaviour. If your neighbour has a right to complain, even if they do it regularly, they're not a nuisance. Unless they're displaying the same behaviours themselves, if they have a right to complain, they can do so. Failing to tidy up. Similar to the unkept garden, a neighbour's failure to tidy up after themselves isn't something you can complain to the council about. So now you know what you can and can't do. Follow our steps and hopefully you won't have to get this far. Good luck, and do let us know about your experiences in the comments section.